Alright, let's get right into it. Beneath our everyday world lies a hidden realm of secrets and covert operations, where intelligence agencies shape history from the shadows. Today we're diving into the 5 most insane CIA operations ever uncovered. These are real missions. Mind control, elaborate deceptions, even weaponizing the ordinary, that sound like fiction but are all too true. The truth is often stranger than fiction. And these stories reveal just how far agencies have gone in the name of national security. Buckle up, let's pull back the curtain on the world's most secretive operations. The late 1960s and early 70s, America was in turmoil. The country was gripped by a sense of uncertainty and fear, as the social fabric seemed to unravel before the eyes of millions. The Vietnam War raged on, dividing families and communities. Protests erupted in cities and on college campuses, with passionate demonstrators demanding an end to the conflict. At the same time, suspicion grew that foreign powers, especially the Soviet Union, were secretly fueling unrest and manipulating American dissent for their own gain. Enter Operation Chaos, the CIA's secret mission to spy on Americans, despite its charter strictly forbidding domestic surveillance. The agency, created to operate overseas, now turned its gaze inward, convinced that the threat might be coming from within. What started as monitoring Americans abroad quickly escalated. The CIA began infiltrating anti-war groups, student organizations, and even the media. Undercover agents attended rallies, took notes, and reported on the activities of fellow citizens, sometimes without any evidence of wrongdoing. The agency built a massive database, tracking over 7,000 citizens and indexing hundreds of thousands more, just for their political beliefs or activism. Names, addresses, and personal details were meticulously cataloged, creating a shadowy archive of dissent. Agents posed as activists, recruited informants, and sometimes even encouraged disruptive actions to identify leaders. The line between observer and participant blurred, as the government's own operatives sometimes stoked the very unrest they were sent to monitor. Local police and other agencies were roped in, creating a sprawling, secret network of surveillance. Information flowed between federal, state, and local authorities, making it nearly impossible for activists to know who was watching, or why. All of this was hidden from the public, and even from many within the CIA itself. The secrecy was so deep that only a handful of top officials knew the full extent of the operation. The justification? National security? The reality? No evidence of widespread foreign control ever surfaced. Despite years of surveillance, the supposed threat remained elusive, raising questions about the true motives behind the operation. When Operation Chaos was exposed in the mid-70s by the Church and Pike committees, the public was shocked. Revelations of government overreach dominated headlines, and trust in institutions plummeted. The fallout led to major reforms, new oversight, and a hard look at the balance between security and liberty. Congressional hearings demanded answers, and new laws were passed to rein in intelligence agencies. The idea that your own government could spy on you for protesting or speaking out was deeply unsettling. For many Americans, it shattered the illusion that their rights were protected, and sparked a national debate about privacy and freedom. Operation Chaos became a cautionary tale, a warning of how fear and unchecked power can erode freedoms. It showed how easily the principles of democracy can be compromised in the name of security. It left a legacy of distrust and a reminder: robust oversight and a free press are essential to keep power in check. Only by shining a light on government actions can citizens protect their rights. The line between security and surveillance is thin, and Chaos showed just how easily it can be crossed. The lessons of that era still echo today, reminding us to remain vigilant in defending our freedoms. The Cold War wasn't just about bombs and spies, it was a psychological battlefield, where fear and paranoia shaped every move. Behind the scenes, governments raced not only for military dominance, but for control over the human mind itself. Fears of enemy brainwashing and psychological manipulation led the CIA to launch Project MKUltra, a top-secret quest for mind control that would become one of the most controversial programs in American history. Officially sanctioned in 1953, MKUltra's goal was chilling. Find ways to control thoughts, erase memories, and even program people to act against their will. The project's ambitions were as vast as they were disturbing, pushing the boundaries of science and ethics. The centerpiece? LSD and a cocktail of other drugs, administered to unwitting subjects including prisoners, patients, and everyday citizens. These experiments were often conducted in secrecy, with little regard for the safety or consent of those involved. The CIA dosed people in brothels, bars, and hospitals, often without consent, causing lasting trauma and even deaths. Some victims never learned the truth about what had happened to them, while others suffered psychological scars for life. The project sprawled across universities, hospitals, and prisons, all under the guise of legitimate research. Professors, doctors, and researchers were sometimes complicit, sometimes kept in the dark, as the CIA funneled money through front organizations. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the so-called Black Sorcerer, led many of these experiments. He became infamous for his willingness to push ethical boundaries, believing the ends justified the means in the race for psychological supremacy. MKUltra also explored hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and psychological torture, obliterating ethical boundaries. The program's reach extended into the darkest corners of the human mind, seeking to break and rebuild personalities. When scrutiny mounted in the 1970s, the CIA destroyed most records, making the full scope of MKUltra nearly impossible to uncover. The agency's efforts to erase its tracks only deepened the mystery and suspicion surrounding the project. Still, surviving files and whistleblowers revealed a government agency operating with almost no oversight, sacrificing human rights for perceived security. Congressional hearings exposed just a fraction of the truth, but the revelations shocked the nation. The search for a Manchurian candidate never produced results, but the damage was real. The idea of creating a mind-controlled assassin remained science fiction, but the suffering inflicted on real people was all too tangible. MKUltra's legacy is one of betrayal, suffering, and a stark warning about unchecked power. The victims' stories remind us of the human cost of secret experiments carried out in the name of national security. It's a reminder, transparency and oversight are critical, especially when the shadows grow darkest. Only by confronting the past can we hope to prevent such abuses in the future. 1953 Iran, a nation at a crossroads, rich in oil and hope. Its bustling streets and vibrant culture masked a brewing storm as the world's superpowers set their sights on its vast oil reserves. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, a symbol of Iranian pride and democracy, nationalized Iran's oil, boldly challenging decades of British control. This move inspired millions of Iranians, but it also sent shockwaves through Western capitals, threatening the interests of powerful oil companies and governments. Britain, desperate to regain its grip, turned to the United States for help. Together they painted Mossadegh as a dangerous radical, a supposed Soviet pawn, using Cold War fears to justify their actions. Propaganda spread quickly, fueling suspicion and unrest. The CIA and MI6 launched Operation Ajax, a secret, meticulously planned operation to overthrow Iran's fledgling democracy and restore the Shah's absolute power. Behind closed doors, agents plotted, strategized, and prepared to reshape a nation's destiny. CIA operative Kermit Roosevelt Jr. became the architect of chaos. He orchestrated a campaign of misinformation, bribed newspapers to spread lies, paid street gangs to incite violence, and manipulated politicians, all to destabilize Mossadegh's government. The first coup attempt faltered as loyalists rallied to defend their prime minister. But with more CIA cash and mounting pressure, the streets of Tehran erupted again in violence and confusion, plunging the city into chaos. Military units, swayed by bribes and promises of power, turned on Mossadegh. Tanks rolled through the streets, and the fragile hope for democracy was crushed beneath their treads. On August 19, 1953, the coup succeeded. The Shah triumphantly returned to Tehran, and Mossadegh's home was left in ruins. Iran's brief experiment with democracy was over, replaced by a monarchy backed by foreign powers. The oil industry was denationalized, with American and British companies now sharing the spoils. Iran's resources, once a symbol of national pride, were again controlled by outsiders. For the West, it was a strategic victory. But for ordinary Iranians, it marked the beginning of decades of repression, lost opportunity, and simmering resentment toward foreign intervention. The Shah's regime, propped up by the CIA, became brutally repressive. The secret police, SAVAK, silenced dissent with fear and violence, fueling anger that would eventually explode in the 1979 revolution. Today, Operation Ajax is recognized as a root cause of US-Iran hostility, a textbook case of blowback, where short-term gains for foreign powers led to decades of mistrust, turmoil, and unintended consequences. The US denied involvement for decades, only admitting the truth in 2013, when declassified documents finally revealed the full extent of the covert operation. The legacy of Ajax endures, a stark warning about the dangers of foreign intervention and the unpredictable, often tragic consequences of toppling democracies in pursuit of power. The early 1960s, Cold War paranoia and the Cuban threat loomed large. After the Bay of Pigs fiasco, US military leaders drafted Operation Northwoods, a plan to stage fake attacks and blame Cuba, justifying an invasion. The proposals were shocking: fake bombings, staged riots, even sinking a boat of refugees or shooting down a civilian airliner, all to manipulate public opinion. These weren't idle ideas. The Joint Chiefs of Staff formally approved and presented them to the Secretary of Defense. The plan was only stopped when President Kennedy and his administration rejected it. Northwoods remained secret for decades, its declassification revealing just how far officials were willing to go. The plan's existence is a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked military power and the need for civilian oversight. Operation Northwoods blurs the line between security and democracy, showing how easily truth can be sacrificed for perceived national interest. Its legacy, a sobering lesson in the importance of transparency, oversight, and a vigilant press, especially when the drums of war beat loudest. The Cold War inspired wild innovation and some truly bizarre ideas. Enter Operation Acoustic Kitty, the CIA's attempt to turn a house cat into a mobile listening device. The plan? Surgically implant a microphone, transmitter, and antenna into a cat, then train it to eavesdrop on Soviet targets. Millions were spent. But the real challenge wasn't the tech, it was the cat. Training a feline to follow orders proved nearly impossible. On its first field test, the Acoustic Kitty was released near its target, and was immediately hit by a taxi. The project was scrapped, a costly and comical failure. When declassified, Acoustic Kitty became a symbol of Cold War absurdity and government waste. It's a reminder that not every secret operation is a stroke of genius, sometimes it's just a catastrophe. So, there you have it. 5 operations that reveal the hidden world of intelligence. These aren't simple tales of good versus evil. They're messy, complex, and show the extreme lengths governments will go when the stakes are high. Necessary can be a dangerous word, especially without strong ethics and oversight. These stories aren't just history. They're lessons about power, secrecy, and the risks of unchecked authority. Understanding the past helps us recognize patterns and protect our freedoms. The shadows will always be there. It's up to us to stay vigilant. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more hidden history.